So I want to talk to you about feedback. And so specifically feedback that I've gotten about selling yourself. So as always, when I come on and we do these lives and we do these activities, it's always based on questions I've received, things I'm hearing in conversations when I'm doing workshops or when I'm working one-on-one with women. And so this is one that has happened recently, but it's also something that I do hear fairly frequently. And people come to me and they say, I've had feedback, or maybe they haven't had the feedback. It's just something they've observed in themselves, but they say, I'm bad at selling myself. How can I fix this? So let's kind of break that down a little bit. I'm bad at selling myself. How can I fix this? There's a lot to kind of unpack here. And I want to be clear about the idea of like selling yourself, because sometimes we're thinking, as women, there's other connotations to that, of course. But when we're talking about selling ourselves, it's the idea of promoting ourselves at work, promoting our businesses. And really, it's about having a personal brand. That's one way that they're saying that they're also telling you is when they say you're not very good at selling yourself, you do not have a personal brand. That's another way that they are saying it. So rather than look at it as selling yourself, because that kind of sounds a little bit odd for us to say, and how do I sell myself? Let's hear that language. And if you do hear that language or you think that about yourself, let's change that a little bit. Instead, let's say trust. How do I build trusting relationships so that people want to promote me, want to work with me, want to do business with me? Okay, so let's not use the word selling. It's kind of a loaded word. How do I build trusting relationships? Okay, let's look at it that way. So today I want to talk to you about this feedback. I'm bad at selling myself, flipping it on its head and talking about it instead as trust. How do I build trust with people? So in addition to that, I want to cover how you can know your impact and talk about it, how you can talk about results, not just solutions, and the kinds of feedback that we are given as women, and just to have that awareness. Okay, so let's start there. Let's start with the kinds of feedback that we receive as women, because it is important to have this awareness and to be aware that there's research, there's a lot of studies that show that the way that women are given feedback in the workplace is different than what is given to men. And so there is a great article, and I will link it into the comments following this live. And it talks about just that. So what this group did is they studied the feedback forms that people are given or people have during their annual performance reviews. And they went in and they were wondering, okay, what and if there are some differences among the feedback that men get on these performance reviews and the kind that women are getting. And so their findings are really, really interesting. So men are getting feedback based on their performance and how their performance and their activities impact the business objectives. And they're given feedback on how to better create success so that the company is reaching business objectives. Women more often are given feedback or criticism as it relates to their style of communication. Okay, so they're rather than being told, if you could improve this skill, if you had better relationships over here, you would see better results. We would have a better return on investment in this area. Instead, they are spending a lot of that time getting feedback on their style of communication. So I'm curious to know, has this ever been the case for you? When you've gone into your annual performance review and you're expecting to hear certain things about your performance, the activities that you're undertaking, what you can do to achieve organizational objectives more effectively, and you walk out of the room hearing feedback about how you are communicating. Okay. So what should we do about that? Well, with any kinds of feedback, we want to accept it with a little bit of grace and take it as information. So you can say, thank you for that information. Thank you for that feedback. Ask any questions that come to mind in that moment. It's a great place to be doing that because that's what you're sitting down to do. But oftentimes when we receive feedback, we aren't really sure what to do with it, where our minds are overtaken with processing that information. So request a follow-up. And this is really, really important because your mind might be, sometimes we receive really big and important feedback and it's almost like an out-of-body experience that we're kind of going, oh my gosh, how do I deal with this? What should I be saying? What do I do? Or you feel a little bit hurt. It can feel really, really personal. So if that is you, that's okay. Say, hey, thank you for sharing that with me. I need some time to think about this. I would like to come back and ask you some follow-up questions tomorrow or later in the week, something like that. But it's just really important that you don't leave it at that with more questions than you have answers. And this also relates to getting that feedback that you are not good at selling yourself. Okay. You want to find out what they meant by that. What did they mean by you aren't very good at selling yourself? Really hone in on what they mean by that, because that could mean something different to what you think it might mean and what they mean within the context of your company. And same thing with your communication style. If they're giving you feedback on your communication style, it's okay. Ask for more information. The other thing I want you to do, because now we know that it's happening to women, that we are receiving information, they're receiving feedback based on our communication style, is to ask for feedback on your activities, on how you are impacting the business goals, about how you are succeeding specifically within your role. They are not giving you that information in the performance review, it's really, really important that you press for that information. So again, ask for it in that sit down. That's what that sit down is for. That's the real intention of it. If they are, surprised or taken aback that you're asking and they don't have answers for you, say, that's okay. I'm going to set up a meeting for us in 1 week's time. And I would like to hear feedback on this. And we can bring back, if it's a form or a file that they have filled out for your annual performance review, or even if it's less formal than that, then you don't necessarily need to be bringing that file in. But make it, relatively urgent, like within a 1 week. Don't wait for multiple weeks to pass. Let them know this is pressing, that this is important. And this is a great way that you are taking your control of your career. You're in your own driver's seat. Okay. And this is really, really important. And it also, in a more subliminal way, is also helping you to help to sell yourself, to help you build trust, because you're saying to them, this is really important to me. It's important to me, for me to know this, for me to know how what I'm doing is impacting business objectives. You can't perform your job as effectively if you aren't measured against those types of things. So make sure that you are doing that. So let's talk a little bit more about what else it might mean when you hear that you are not very good at selling yourself. Okay, so what are some things that you can do? Well, you can talk about your job, talking about sorry, I just had something come up on my screen there. You can talk about your job in terms of the results that you're achieving, okay? Not just the steps that you're taking or the solutions that you're bringing. Talk about results. That's a great way that you can sell yourself, and it doesn't feel like you are being self-promotional or you're just marketing or you're all about you. You are talking about the work. You're being really, really objective. So step away from the habit of describing what you do by your job title. Your job title is very limiting. Your job title just brings in what people already think about somebody with your job. So they might have worked with someone with your exact title before, whoever your predecessor was, whoever they worked with in a previous company that they worked at. If you say, I'm an accountant, They're going to think they know what an accountant does and what you are capable of doing. It's your job and your responsibility. And really, it's one of the most powerful things about having a personal brand is the ability to shape what other people think about you and what you can do. And one of the most effective ways you can do this is by talking about your job, by the results that you get, by the impact that you have. So how do you do that? Well, you start to really pay attention and track results. So like many of us, and I know myself included, you get your head down, you get working, you get doing something, you send that work out the door and you move on to the next thing. We're all really busy and I totally get that. One way that you can get better at selling yourself, better at positioning yourself for the future is to get in the habit of tracking the projects that you're working on and what their results are. So this requires a couple of things. One, it requires some kind of catch-all, a place where you're going to do this tracking. It could be an Excel file. It could be a notebook that you want to have, digital or hard copy. And you're going to talk about the dates, who was involved, the time, the expectation for how long this was going to take, what business objective this aligned with, what were the goals, and then after the fact, coming back to it and saying, did we reach those targets? What else can you measure? Was it you got it done faster? You got it done without as many resources? Was it an opportunity to collaborate with people that maybe hadn't been involved or brought into the work before and it created a better result? All these kinds of things that you can be tracking. What skills did you bring in? And also consider the soft skills. We often look at hard skills more and more, and especially in the future, we're going to be wanting to be talking about and selling ourselves and our soft skills. Okay, so that is one way that you can do it, is getting into a routine, getting into a habit of tracking the projects that you are working on and the results that they are getting and talking about those. Okay, that's a great way that you can sell yourself, that you can promote yourself. But it's a little bit easier because you're talking about specific work that you're doing. You're not making it all about you, okay? And for many of us, as we're starting to be promoting ourselves, it's easier to talk very specifically about the work. Okay, so another thing that that's really, really important is to have a personal brand statement. Okay, so this is something that I do in all of my workshops, is I help people develop their very own personal brand statement. So instead of leading a conversation by saying, this is what I do, and starting with your job title, because we know that that doesn't actually tell people enough about what you do, that you create a really, really succinct one sentence way of describing what you really do. So as you're starting to capture all of those things about yourself, about your projects that you're working on, the results that they're getting, the impact that you're having, you'll start to notice some patterns. You'll start to notice certain things that you are bringing to the table each time. You can also speed that process up a little bit if you're looking to find out more about the impact, more about what is unique about you, by asking your colleagues, by asking other stakeholders who have worked with you before. Hey, what's it like working with me? Hey, why did you invite me to be part of this particular project? Pay attention to what they're saying. And when you start to notice an overlap, some commonalities among what they're saying, those are the big things that you're going to really want to pay attention to. And go beyond just the exact words that they're using, but sometimes people will use different words to essentially describe the same thing. So put them all together, look at them. I like to use a highlighter and highlight the ones that essentially mean the same thing so that I can capture them all. And then in your own words, start to include those into how you are talking about yourself. So my personal brand statement is this: I am a personal branding strategist. I work with driven women to help them overcome imposter syndrome and stand out so they can reach their career goals. So as you can see, I talk about the result there of reaching career goals. And so for your result, it might be you are able to reach new markets. You are able to keep your company's product top of mind for consumers. Think about it that way. Like, you might be in marketing, you might be in banking. Maybe your result is ensuring our customers become loyal fans. Things like that have really help you stand out, and they actually describe to the world and to your colleagues and to your other customers what it is that you do, because you're more than your job title. And then you can add in other things to that as well. You can add in who you work with specifically. So for me, it's driven women. That was the example that I shared, or within the example that I shared within my brand statement. You can also add the way that you do that. So for you, it might be using, best accounting practices, or, the more specific that you can get into your field, the better. The way that I do it and the way that I describe it in my brand statement is to help people overcome imposter syndrome, because that's so common for all of us, and to help them stand out. So I hope that has been really helpful to you. Those are just some of the things and some of the ways that you can adjust the way that you're working and the way that you're doing things, so that if you have this feedback that you're not good at selling yourself, that you can say, okay, what that really means is I am not building the kinds of relationships that are going to help me get promoted, going to help me get to where I want to be in my career, or going to help me achieve certain business goals that are important to my role. So how can I do that? So what we talked about here today was changing how you talk about what your role is, and really shifting the emphasis from your job title to the results that you get, and having examples to back that up. So it's you're tracking, you're going to change and add in that habit of tracking the work that you're doing, whether it's in a notebook or an Excel spreadsheet. And you're going to keep track of as many things as possible. It's just too hard for us to keep it all in our heads. So if we can have a file on hand that we can pop all this information into, it's going to help you be able to craft these messages so much faster, so much more effectively. So you might be wondering, where can I share this information? Okay, now that you have it, what are the next steps? How do I share it? Where do I share it? So everywhere. I mean, the really obvious one is in your resume or your LinkedIn profile. So of course, those are ones where, when you're actively looking for a job or you're applying for a job, that's the go-to place that you're going to put them in. And then you're going to want to be prepared to be talking about them in a job interview. What about if you're not looking to leave, but you are looking to promote yourself within the company that you're at, or within the industry you're in even? Well, that happens in conversations, because like we said, it's all about relationships. Relationships are built through these conversations that we have. So there's a lot of different ways to do this, and it's your job to find and be really creative about where you add these in. So some examples might be when someone comes to you and they are worried, they are stressed out, they're coming to you with a problem. One way that we can really build trust with people is to help put them at ease and say, hey, look, you know what? I've been through something like this before, or let me tell you about an experience that I've had where the same kind of problem came up. Tell them about one of these projects that you were a part of. And this doesn't necessarily need to be one that you led, just one that you were a part of, that you contributed to. So share that insight with them. Share whatever insight that you can find find from it, share it with them, and they'll likely have something else that they'll be able to glean from it too. And so in doing that, one of the things you're doing is you're going to help put them at ease, because you're saying to them, hey, look, I understand. I've been there before. This is what happened. Hopefully it has a positive ending, something that they can learn from, something that they can learn to do. But even if it doesn't, you can say, this worked because of this, or you know what, this is what I wish that I had done differently. And in that way, you're also building trust with them. So that's one way. When someone comes to you and they're saying, we've got a problem, here's the challenge, and they want to, maybe they're just sort of there to vent. Well, you can bring something into the conversation that's going to help them, but it's also going to be promoting yourself and what your abilities are, but not in a way where you feel like you're having to go in and I'm here to promote myself. That feels uncomfortable for us, right? So other ways you can do that is through presentations. So presentations are a really, really powerful way to be more visible and to show that you have expertise in a specific area. So anytime you have the opportunity to present, share these data points, share these experiences or these stories that showcase the results that you have had. So this could be formal or informal. An informal example of this, again, would be when you are within a meeting and a question comes up or a topic comes up, you can present this result that you've had and share it as information, as insight to the group. Another way is that in the actual formal presentations, you're there to showcase a new, maybe it's, if you're an accountant, you're there to talk about the end of quarter numbers or something like that. Then you can talk about, hey, it was really interesting as my team and I were working on this, we came to find this out, and we actually were able to do this in a much shorter amount of time because we created a new process. Well, now you're also promoting yourself and your team as someone who can look at the way things are being done and find improvements in how those can be done. And that can be really, really powerful as well. So anytime you have an opportunity to talk about your results, to talk about the work that you have done, jump in and do it. And I know it can feel uncomfortable if this isn't something that you are used to doing, but it is one way that you can overcome that concept of promoting yourself, of selling yourself. It's a way that you are going to be effective at building trust with people, because people can't trust what they don't see, what they don't understand, right? So let me know here if this is something you do, if this is something you are going to try to do. I would love to hear about it. I'd love to be able to support you as you're doing this as well. I think it is so, so important. So what did we talk about today? It's just about 11. So it is time to wrap up. We talked about that feedback that so many of us have gotten, or that we have thought of for ourselves, which is that I'm just bad at selling myself. Well, let's flip this on its head. Let's look at it in a very different way, and instead not think about it as selling ourselves, but instead think about it as, how do I build trusting relationships so that people will want to promote me, so that people will want to work with me? So some of the best ways you can do this is to, one, ask more specific information about what they mean when they say to you, you're bad at selling yourself, or when they give you any kinds of feedback. What do you mean by that? I'd like to hear more. Can you give me an example? The next thing that you want to be doing is talking about your work, not only using your job title, but using the results and the impact of the work that you do. So you can do this by having a personal brand statement. You can do this by having those anecdotal stories that really paint a great picture of the results that you have gotten. So there's a whole bunch of different places to share these stories, to share these brand statements. Some of them are going to be really obvious. but some of them will be less obvious. And it's your job to find and be creative about when you can share these stories and share this statement. So as always, I'm always happy to have you here, to have you watching the replay. Let me know if you do catch the replay, and just write that in the comments. Share any questions that you have for follow-up, and I'll definitely answer them. And I will see you next week, same place and same time. Bye, everybody.